Well, here we are with a review today that is going to be hard to top for the rest of the year. Don't get angry with me. I'm not saying album of the year because it's only January 30th and it's only been a month into 2024. But this was one of my most anticipated releases this year. I love their last two albums, big fan of the band, so there's a bit of a bias here. But this album gets the 10 out of 10 stamp of approval for me. So, and I've listened to this a lot this week and last week. A lot. My ears are just ringing right now. My tinnitus is like, what are you doing to me? So, what I'm talking about is the new Knoll album, As Spoken. If you're not familiar with Knoll, they are a band out of Tennessee. So they're US band. They have two other albums out called Metempiric. I can never say that album name, that came out in 2022. Fantastic album. Absolutely love that album. And then their first album, Interstice, came out in 2021. Um, a bit of an under the radar band here. I would say definitely they're a lot more known now. But been a fan of them ever since I first heard their first album back when it first came out. It was just a random Bandcamp find. I was just searching for some grindcore, and that's how I figured out who they were. So they're kind of a band that me and a lot of my close metal friends adore right now. We talk quite a bit about them, so we were really excited for this album to come out. The new album, As Spoken, came out last Friday on January 26th. It looks like they've self-released this, so it's not on any specific label. However, there is a vinyl edition that was pressed by Total Dissonance Worship, an amazing label. Simon is awesome. I've shown off so much of his stuff on this channel. In the earlier days of the channel, I haven't bought as much recently from him, but he's done Vitriol reissues and stuff like that. They released a vinyl copy for that, and that is the one that I pre-ordered. I have not received it yet. I was hoping to have the record before I created this video, but I don't want to wait any longer. I just want to talk about this music. I want to get it out there for people to listen to and understand and figure out who this band are, and hopefully gain some more fans. So yeah, I need to kind of do like a disclaimer for this band. They are very much, especially with this record, not your cookie cutter grindcore band by any means. The first two albums definitely had that cookie cutter grindcore element. It reminded me a lot of Discordance Axis with the similarities of the high pitched screaming vocal styles and just the fast, super fast aggressiveness with the music. However, for this album, it's very obvious that they really challenged themselves with writing new music and taking it to a different level, to not just be that cookie cutter grindcore band. Definitely a lot of noise elements as well. So it's definitely a grind, death grind noise band. So if you see grindcore, just know you're not just getting grindcore when you listen to this band. It is a phenomenal record, but it's not something that I feel like a first time listener may enjoy or digest fully on the first listen. It is definitely one of those things that needs to be listened to probably several times to get used to, because it is a really aggressive, really noise inducing grindcore with a lot of avant-garde variations and even black metal infused into it. Um, Especially this album. So it's 11 tracks, 40 minutes long. Not your stereotypical grindcore songs where they're only 30 seconds long. Not 35 to 50 songs on the album. The longest track is 6 minutes long, and let's just do a track by track basis here. I'll go briefly track by track. I don't want to go too in depth because I just want you guys to listen to the album. But it starts off pretty much just in your face brutality with the title track, As Spoken. James's high pitched vocals are an obvious like standout here. For this band, it's definitely one of those things where you are like, holy shit. When you first hear it, I don't know how he's able to do this with his voice. I don't know how he's able to talk after he does this. But his vocal performance is definitely what really sets Knoll aside compared to other bands that you may listen to. Not just his vocals, but also just the, like I said, the incorporation of that avant-garde field, the black metal sound, the sinister, evil black metal sound that they put into their music, as well as that noise element. So that is right out the gate. You get that aggression. James is just screaming at you, and it's got very chunky, chaotic guitars. The drumming is immaculate on this album. My God, the drummer Ryan Cook is, or sorry, not Ryan, Jack is just phenomenal. Holy shit. You don't necessarily hear the drumming a whole lot when you're listening to it on a stereo unless you have a very, very nice, like high performing, high clarity stereo. For me, I wouldn't say I do. So this is definitely an album that I would recommend listening to with headphones, at least for the first couple of listens, because there's a lot of layers within these songs, and the drumming is not always as prominent because there's so much other noise inducing samples and chaotic guitars and James is screaming that you don't necessarily hear that right out the gate when you're listening to it. Again, that's just for my stereo. If you have like a $2,000 to $10,000 setup, you probably hear it right away, but definitely warrants a listen on a good sounding headphone. I've got these Sony noise canceling headphones that I've had for years. They're phenomenal. I listen to music all the time when I'm working, and just that experience definitely is warranted for this album. So the first song is very much aggressive in your face, chunky guitar tones, and it has a pretty much a middle section where it does have like this breakdown in there, and it has like these like really creepy whisper sounds that like cascades over these chunky guitar tones. But it definitely has a build up in here where it sounds like a freight train is just about to come and destroy your house. It's like if there's a goddamn tornado and a freight train coming towards your house. Like that is essentially what this song is. It has that build up and then it obviously slows down. So the layering of this grindcore album is definitely got more of that noise, slow down, chunky, almost sludginess that Primitive Man tends to bring into their music. However, this is more in like the vein of grindcore, definitely reminiscent of Full of Hell as well. So I get a lot of Primitive Man sounds in here, a lot of Full of Hell sounds in here, mixed with, Organ Dealer and a Discordance Axis. So if you're fans of all of those bands, you're going to absolutely love this album because there's a lot of those elements that are just all blended together that Knoll does in their own way that, sets them as their own like path in regards to that sound. The next song, Offering, it starts out with just heavy as fuck crushing guitars. Like this is the Primitive Man that I'm thinking about. A faster, heavier, crushing, faster tempo paced crushing Primitive Man. It definitely has a little bit more slower pace from the previous song, a little bit lower growls, but it does eventually pick up into that faster grindcore pace that you're expecting. But this song is just pure evil, sinister. It's just pure evil and sinister sounding. Definitely, James's vocals just sounds like a rabid monster. I don't know how he does this without just completely destroying himself. I'm exhausted. 2 songs in and I'm already exhausted with this. Wet Fountain is definitely probably one of my favorite songs on this album. This is the next song. It's just chaotic and noisy. It's crushing guitars. A lot of that same style and elements are throughout this whole entire record. But it ends in just complete like the tremolo, chaos and just sludgy, heavy ass guitars. Just the overall heavy and crushingness, I'm going to say like 1,000 times today, definitely makes that one of my favorite songs, which then goes into another one of my favorite songs on here called Reveal of Light or Reveal of Light. I can't say that word. I'm just, here we go again, not being able to say things. Again, James's vocals are just so evil and sinister on this. This is definitely the longest track on the album. It's a little over 6 minutes long. It starts off with just utter pure chaos, sinister, crushing vocals. Again, the drumming here is simply phenomenal. So good. Oh, God. Again, these musicians are just incredible. I don't know how they don't just collapse when they're done recording these songs. Obviously, they're probably used to it by now. They've been doing this for years, but it's just, I'm exhausted. I couldn't imagine just playing and screaming like that for 6 minutes straight. Um, but the interesting thing here is that there is a trumpet that is in this song. It's a very avant-garde sounding trumpet, reminding me a bit of Imperial Triumphant in that regard. It sounds probably out of tune. I'm assuming that's the whole point and the whole atmosphere it's supposed to be creating here. But that brings that avant-garde-ness to this album that Knoll has moved into, has definitely, taken a little bit more, dipped their toes into that element of music. They've obviously done that on previous albums, but I feel like this is a little bit more sinking of the toes in the water for it. But it's just utter noise. It's just utter trumpet wailing chaos. It works well. Again, this song stood out to me. It's the one that I've just been like, wow, okay, that's cool. But there is literally nothing pretty about this song whatsoever. Sometimes you hear a trumpet in a song, you're like, oh, it's got a nice horn. No, it's not a nice horn sound. This is an evil, rip you to shred horn sound in this song. But again, like I said, it reminds me a bit of Imperial Triumphant, less disorganized chaos. This is a little bit more organized chaos in that regard. And then it ends on this eerie sample. So they incorporate these noisy samples within their music as well. It's not overdone. I can't stand when bands do that, when they just continuously put samples in and stuff like that. It's not overdone. It's done very well. It blends really well, and they do it really well with transitioning from song to song. It's just, don't worry. When I say samples and noise, don't take that as it's just, that's all you hear. Trust me, it's not the only thing about this album. The only other thing that I really wanted to call out is Mirror Ward, I believe, is the next song after this. This is, again, one of the more longer songs. It's 5 minutes long. It has a lot of noise elements into this song. It's definitely a slower pace than previous tracks, but it's done very well. It's full of noise and sinister vocals. So that's another standout track that I really enjoyed about this album. There is probably the most like cookie grindcore song on here is Unto Viewing. It's just fast and abrasive, but it ends on like this fuzzy filled creepy sample, but it goes well. But yeah, if you're thinking about like, well, where's the grindcore-ness in here? It's there, but this is definitely the most grindcore, like I said, cookie cutter grindcore song on the album. Portrait is another one of my favorite songs. Holy hell. Just a crushing ass song. Again, another reminder of Primitive Man. Definitely I hear Primitive Man on this song. It's a very slower paced song. It's definitely got that funeral grind aesthetic that they've been promoting for this album, because it's got that. It's not, obviously it's not funeral death metal, like it's not that slow, but it's got that slower pace while still making you realize you're listening to a grindcore album. It's interesting. It's interesting sound that they've created, and just the drumming is incredible. Again, James's vocals, he gets really low on this song. Like, the guy's vocal variances are phenomenal, and he shows them off throughout this whole entire record. So again, another shining highlight for me on this album. There is a break. You do get a break, because you get assaulted up until the 9th song. The 9th song, Utterance, is just a noise song. It's just a noisy song. There's really nothing to it. It's quieter, noisier song, a little bit slower. It's evil and creepy. It's 3 minutes, so you get a 3-minute break before the final 2 songs that are just, again, back to utter crushing, destroying your ears. Fettered Oath does have the trumpet back. I did not hear this on the initial listen when I was streaming this in my car. But when I put my headphones on, you can definitely hear the trumpet layered in here with the guitars. It's not as prominent as it was on the previous song that I discussed a couple minutes ago, but it's there. I'm 100% sure it is. I even asked a couple people, and I really like that. It's very subtle, but they definitely bring that back into here for the layering of these songs that are really... I'm telling you, listen to this with headphones, because you'll hear these things. And then Shall It Be is just your final crushing heavy song. It ends, the album just ends in utter chaos, crushing chaos. And I feel like that's the perfect way to end it. It doesn't just end, it doesn't fade out, doesn't do any of this like noise samples. It's just bye-bye, we've destroyed you. And that's the end of the album. So final overall thoughts. It's a very dark, very evil, sinister, and abstract sound to this album. This album is not for the faint of heart by any means. It destroys your ears. It can be an exhausting listen, especially if you're a first-time listener. Even a third time, it's fairly exhausting. But there are so many things going on with each song. Like I've said, definitely give it a good headphone listen. Knoll pushed themselves with this. They've pushed themselves beyond the writing of their past albums. And you can tell that they took like a creative turn with this. They challenged themselves within each song that they wrote. It's clear from this album that they didn't want it to just be a cookie cutter grindcore band. They wanted to create their own path here. And they wanted to take a step into a different dimension that is just beyond what you would expect from a grindcore album. So, like I said, it's definitely, if you're a fan of Full of Hell, if you're a fan of Primitive Man, or even Organ Dealer, Discordance Axis, you will enjoy this because there's a lot of those same elements in there. The high-pitched screaming, the abrasive in your face, super fast, grindcore sound. There's the noise element. There's the chunky guitars that are similar to Primitive Man. And then that overall just utter chaos that Full of Hell tends to bring to their music with the noise elements and the high-pitched screaming. There's a lot of those variations within this album, but it's all done in the way that Knoll does it in their own way. Again, for me, a perfect 10 out of 10 album. I like it so much more than their previous albums, and I love their last album, Metempiric. Definitely one that I still spin quite a bit. I've owned it on 2 different formats. I own it on vinyl. I own it on CD. This album is leaps and bounds, definitely more into a different creative direction. And I love this band. So definitely check it out. Link will be in the description. Vinyl is still available. I think there's tapes. There's also CDs and t-shirts, and just the way that they promoted this album themselves was just done phenomenal, all from the beginning to now. Like, it's just a great album. So check it out. And that's all I have. Hopefully I'll get the vinyl soon. I'll do another video showing off that because I'm excited about it. Total Dissonance Worship makes great records. So I'll see you guys in the next one.